Did you check on me? Did you check on him? Did you check on her? Song is called People. And sometimes we do need that. But I'm going to say good night to everyone and welcome to Sex on the Bridge with me, the original dancehall queen, Carlene. Yes, I'm in studio by myself tonight, but don't worry, I do have guests. They'll be on Zoom, so you'll hear about it later. And of course, you know, it's me bringing your weekly dose of grown and sexy radio content. Um, Today's a happy, sad day for me. Oh, today's a happy, sad day for me. Um, Happy because my sisters are here in Jamaica with me. So I want to start. Lorraine, Corona, Janet, Pinky, Carrie, they're all here in Jamaica. So that's the happy part, especially, you know, I, I haven't seen Pinky since last year and I haven't seen Corona since in 5 years. So it was, yeah, it's a good, that's the good part. The bad part is they're all here from my nephew Joe Mercer, Joseph Marley funeral. Yeah, he was laid to rest today. And I just want to send out my condolences to his family and my family. You know, my sister Carrie Ann, who I'm telling you, I wish this on no one. I'm wearing full white, representing for him. It was his favorite color. And his funeral today was also, you know, the dress code was white. So I just want to say condolences to her kids. So Stefan, Johan, Summer, and Jabel, that's Carrie's kids, Joseph brothers and sisters. And he has other siblings by Stephen Marley. I don't know their names, but condolences to them and Stephen Marley and the whole Marley family. You know, it's a hard time and you think it gets better after today. It actually, most times get worse. So keep the faith, guys. More than ever, as the song say, people, check on me, check on you, check on us, check on them. Sometimes you never know what's going on in somebody's life, in somebody's mind. And a simple phone call sometimes can make a difference. Just to say, how are you? Are you okay? Can I bring you something to drink, to eat? Can I just come and visit you? You never know. And as this week we're talking, it's a continuation of mental health and relationship. It's the part that, you know, that song that just Daniela just played was and Kevin was really, I was listening to it. Andre Stevenson was asking for that song last week. And I mean, I've heard it before, but I never listened to it because with the headphones, you hear everything. And it was as clear as daylight. Hearing the words, now I understand why he wanted that song. It's really meaningful. And it does speak to family, friends, and mental health. So, as always, you know, I'll say the family or the friends you choose, but you do have family that's from the bloodline. That's real. So reach out to each other. Don't wait for disaster or some birthdays or Christmas. Sometimes just check on each other. Crystal, I love you. I love you world without end. And you know, I want to pick up my nephew Elijah Reed. Yes, that's my punky. You know, he's having some challenges, but he has support. He has his mother, his father, all his aunts, his cousins, his brother, his sister. So, you know, it makes a difference. I love you, Elijah. Hi, Ryan. All right, so we're going to go into, of course, you know, guys, tonight is a little different. I'm not running the under 18s to bed tonight. Can you imagine? I'm saying get guidance, have an adult with you, you know, somebody over the age of 18. Because sometimes it starts with kids. You can see the signs. If you pay attention, sometimes you can tell that something is not right or something is not on path. You know, so parents, tonight is the night, I think, if they're up, if you have school in the morning, go to bed. Watch the rerun on Friday. But tonight is the night where the parents can, you know, listen to the program with the kids and listen to what they're saying. Listen to the questions they ask, because sometimes that's the first sign to that something is wrong. They ask a question. All right. And don't always talk about, Jamaicans have this way, children must be seen or not heard. So it's a mentality which I definitely despise. I do not go by that. I think children should always be expressive, of course, in a manageable way, in a childlike way too, but children must be heard, because sometimes that's the start to what's to come. And when there is a problem, you see a child, acting, even if they're not children, meaning under 18, because my daughter will always be my child. So watch people, look at the changes. If they stop eating something that they used to love, mark it, they might just be tired of it, but still check in to say, but I know you like patty. She likes patty, she likes pasta, she likes a certain thing. So, when she doesn't want it, unless she asks for something else, I start to question her. You don't want patty? Things like that. And it sometimes lead you into hearing what's going on. So please pay attention to your family, to your friends, to your children. Mental health starts somewhere. All right. Last week we had a very interesting show, and I want to thank all my listeners, all my viewers, and all the text messages and comment I got on Instagram. There was one particular lady. Tonight we do have a specialist. We have a psychologist, a psychiatrist will be on, Dr. Sophia Longmore. She was asking me questions. So I hope you're listening, caller from Linstead. I hope you're listening. She was asking, what should she do when she gets depressed or feeling depressed? What should she do? So that's a question I hope Dr. Longmore will answer. Just for that, she DM'd me asking when she get, and I told her I wasn't a specialist, but I did say, try and speak to someone, your family member, someone who you enjoy talking to or like. And so she said, she listened. Hopefully she listening tonight. So as usual, to be a part of the show, you can call in 876-676-4996 or send me a voice note to participate in the show. Not a personal voice note, please. 876-551-5782 and be a part of the show. You can ask a question or two. So last week, as you know, we started the episode, with Andre and Carla. We'll have some guests on to speak with you tonight, and you'll hear some more on, mental health. But before we continue, do you believe you can spot mental illness in, let's say, a loved one? Somebody send me a voice note or call in to let me know, because a lot of times people, especially when you have depression, it is a part of mental health, and you have somebody, let's say, commit suicide, and everybody's like, but I never saw the sign. He was happy, she was happy, she was eating, she was partying, she did this, she did that, and then, this happens. So let's know if we can see the signs. Let's know if we can, understand how and where we can go. I don't really, tonight is just not a happy night for me. It's not one of the nights where I'm bubbly, but the show goes on, right? Sex on the Bridge every Tuesday night right here with me. All right. Yes, I'm going to go to a break. We'll be right back. Yes, welcome back to Sex on the Bridge with me, Carlene, the original dancehall queen. Good night to my niece, Shanice. Good night, Shanice. I didn't forget you. I was just talking about sisters. All right, so I want to tell you, what is mental health? The World Health Organization describe mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realize his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So it's not like they're cast out and, throw them to the bushes, or they can be normal citizens with issues that, we'll hear more about it from my very next guest. Yes, I have Senator Dr. Sophia Longmore. Good night. Good night.
Hi, Carlene. Good night, and
Hi.
hello to your listeners, to your viewers.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming. I haven't seen you in a while. Well, I do. I see you on TV. So I shouldn't say that. How are you though?
I'm good. I'm very blessed and grateful for that.
Okay.
Happy 23 to all of your listeners and your
No man,
viewers.
so
And to yourself, of course.
where are you in the youth of fountain of youth? Oh my god, you look like 20. Nice.
Well, shh.
All right. So you can send on some, I'll take a little, just a little. I don't want too much. All
Yeah,
right.
man, you don't need much. You don't need much.
All right. Mental health here is such a serious situation where I had two guests last week that gave us on one of them told us about when he went to half a tree and people, attacked him, and just I see it. But I do understand people because, we relate to, we're going to call it quote unquote madman. When you see a madman on the road, like how we style them or how we call them, and you're not certain what he might do, is it right for us to be afraid of them?
It is, whether it is right or not, you cannot blame someone
Right.
for being fearful. Because the truth of the matter is, and all right, what we have to recognize, and one of the efforts, I'm also president of the Psychiatric Association of Jamaica, the Jamaica Psychiatric Association. So it's a group of professionals who especially deal with mental health and such. And one of the things that we recognize is this that you speak of, the significant stigma
Yes.
that is associated with persons living with a mental illness, to the point where people, even in recognizing that they themselves may have an issue, are refraining from seeking help, which is unfortunate. So one of the first efforts that we're pushing and that I'm trying to really get out there myself personally is to speak of our mental wellness. That is a whole different perception. And your mental wellness could be on a spectrum from it being not very good to it being very awesome. And I actually create the concept of mental wealth, to where you're at the point where you're so well adjusted that you're able to even give off yourself and actualize in that way. But when you see the quote unquote madman, that is an extreme or a severe form of ill health that is what we call psychosis. So that person has basically or is basically affected to the point where they have lost a sense of reality in some way. And so they may act under that loss of touch with reality, and that may become very negative for persons who may be affected by that.
How does one get to that stage? Is there signs? I know some of them are homeless, why they end up there, but I know people who have family who has ended up there. How do they get to that stage? Is it, like, let's say we have diabetes and it starts out, and if you don't watch what you eat, how do they get to that stage?
You're spot on, Carlene. You're spot on. Essentially, mental illnesses and having a disorder, we're all a bag of hormones, really and truly. We're as an animal, we're all a bag of hormones. Hormones and chemicals within our body controls all sorts of facets of how we function. So like you said, a diabetic, insulin controls the level of sugar in your body.
Right.
In our brain, how our brain works is through what we call neurotransmitters. the little chemicals that enable connection between the neurons.
Okay.
And this is, and the cells in our brain. And this is how we interpret our senses. This is how we think. This is how we have emotions, etc. When those, just like in a diabetic, when those hormones go out of control, you see a manifestation that persons can observe.
Okay.
Just like a diabetic, when the issue is mild or it is not so severe, you cannot tell. You cannot look at somebody and say, oh, that person is diabetic. You have to do a test.
Right.
Likewise with this, if the condition is in its early stages or if it is controlled and managed properly, you cannot tell. But
Okay.
just like the diabetic, if it does not get the proper management, it can exacerbate.
Okay.
And just like the diabetic, there are circumstances that will put you at risk for developing these disorders, and also circumstances that will worsen them and bring them out more.
Is there signs? Let's say, what's one of the most common sign of mental illness? Like, people talk about schizophrenia, which is the most common one that we experience here in Jamaica.
Well, by far, not just in Jamaica, but globally, depression is recognized as probably the most common and the most frequently and also debilitating. And at the end of the day, Carlene, you have to always equate these things. Sad to say that we are very financially driven. And so the depression also significantly affects the GDP of a country, the functionality of the work population, and so forth.
Okay.
So depression is by far the most common. But when you disaggregate it, and especially in the Jamaican population and in populations such as ours, post-colonial and developing world, trauma and what we call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or other issues related to trauma are also pretty frequent. But we also have the usual amounts of the bipolar disorders, the schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorders, and our famous Professor Hicklin had indicated a predisposition to a lot of what we call personality disorders.
Okay. All right. For some people who don't know that being depressed is a form of mental illness, how do you explain that? And what can they do if they're experiencing not knowing it's something going on wrong?
Right. So depression, as I tried to say in the beginning, that I'm trying to shift the conversation to say you're not mentally well.
Right.
So
Right.
being depressed means that you're not optimally who you can be and who you wish to be. Now, remember too also that all emotions and all of what we deal with as individuals is on a spectrum. So in terms of from normal to abnormal. So everybody gets sad sometimes.
Right.
Everybody gets anxious.
That's really what I
sometimes.
wanted to say. Not because you're sad, does it mean you're depressed?
Right. So when it becomes an issue,
Okay.
is one, when it starts to affect who you ideally would want to be and your functionality. So a big term that we use there is what we call it becomes almost ego dystonic. It's not who you ideally would want to be.
Okay.
It also becomes significant when your normal level of functioning socially or occupationally. So how you interact with people that you socialize with in your family, your friends, your workplace, or even your ability to do whatever you occupy your time with normally, your job, your hobby, if it's a housewife, not being able to take care of the home as she normally would. So if it impairs your functionality,
Okay.
and also if you become a threat to yourself or others, that's when the red flags go up. That's when we tend to get persons seeking help. And just to add here that individuals seek help when they tend to have lost a sense of control. So if you recognize that, all right, the last 2 weeks I'm not feeling fully myself, or I'm not really feeling good, or I'm not really, and then you realize that, hold on there, I can't shake this feeling.
Right.
I can't do my usual things that I usually do to feel better.
Because you might have
uh,
a 2 day down, but the third day you say, no, man, this is enough.
and shake it off,
Right.
right? When you start to realize that you're almost losing a sense of control, that is when people really start to get anxious or depressed, or when they don't have a plan in place to address it. And that is why it is really very critical that you seek help that is trained and properly enabled to help you. Because if you, just the mere fact of going in and seeking help and getting a plan in place can be highly therapeutic.
Okay. Yeah, don't try figure it out for yourself. Don't let somebody say, "Oh, take 2 aspirin, man. You just want to sleep it off," or
You man, go sleep it off. You're all right, man. Or,
"and eat something nice,"
yeah,
or "let me
yeah.
take you out and cheer you up."
Right, right. And
Those aren't
even though
good.
that person, even though that person might be well intended and might want to be there, at the end of the day, I personally I seek to try and address the underlying issues. I try to, you don't treat the symptom, you treat the cause. So, even the role of being a supporting friend, etc., it's highly, highly, highly important. But you also want to encourage the individual to seek the help that they may actually need to resolve the issue, because sometimes it can be overwhelming for that friend trying to help.
Yes. What is the worst case of mental illness in somebody that you can't see? Is there such thing? You know, as you said earlier on, what we can see, we can know, but when you
Mm-hmm.
can't see it, is there?
Well, in terms of that's an interesting question. The worst case that you can't see. Well, it would be someone who has a very negative, maybe homicidal, and I would say homicidal because that would even be worse than
What does
suicidal,
homicidal mean?
intent to hurt you or hurt somebody else.
Okay.
So somebody might have a homicidal intent
Okay.
that is not obvious, and worse if it is combined like with a personality issue. And and what we're seeing, Carlene, is, and this we may see manifest, where people who are very angry, um who may be trained or equipped in an aggressive way to normally combat, they may now become almost like a like somebody's worst nightmare. So we have seen certain circumstances of domestic violence and some of the murder suicides that we have seen.
Yes, and we've
And
seen a lot.
right, and this is triggered. Remember now, anger tends to come from being hurt. So when you have the emotions involved, when people's emotions, hearts, and affections are involved, and that gets hurt, they can then become very angry. And if they are predisposed and are maybe trained to inflict violence, then they can become a very dangerous combination.
Is there signs that you can tell to these things? Like as you said, we figure out the depression, but like schizophrenia or bipolar or any other others, is there signs like only a doctor can assess it, or is there signs how somebody is, why somebody classified as being bipolar?
Well, it is like everything else. So a psychiatrist. So there's a big question that a lot of I would not say ignorance, but people are not sure, and I can understand why. Anything that deals with the mind, psychiatry is coming from where people used to be burnt at the stake because people didn't understand that it was that issue. They used to bore holes in the skull to release evil spirits and so forth. So psychiatry has come when people don't understand things. It's different from a broken arm where you can see the actual physical injury.
Yes.
They tend to glamour or put negative connotations to it. So even with the jobs in mental health care, a psychologist is different from a
Psychiatrist,
psychiatrist.
yes.
A psychologist is someone who uses primarily psychotherapy, talk therapy. But
Right,
this is not
medication
just
is not right.
right. This is not just counseling. They have specific modalities of psychotherapy that they apply, that they have to be trained in for at least 3 years, and some go on to a further 2 years to their doctorate to subspecialize in that. A psychiatrist is a fully qualified medical doctor, so goes through medical school, done fully qualified at the level of a general practitioner or family doctor, and then general practitioner, and then goes on to a further 4 years of training to be a psych. So it is a minimum of about 11 years training to become a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And this comes because, and why this is necessary, is that you have to, when you see an individual in front of you, you have to learn to pick up and decipher things that the regular person will overlook, and see it in the context of a possible symptom that belongs to a particular diagnosis. But separate from that, you also have to recognize whether or not what you are seeing that is possibly a psychiatric illness can be explained by something non-psychiatric, something that is physical, because you can have physical conditions that can present like a psychiatric issue.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody could have a brain tumor, somebody could have a thyroid problem, a hormone with their thyroid levels and so forth, and it could present like it's a psychiatric condition. So it does require a professional to make the accurate and the formal diagnosis. But it goes without saying that, especially if you are someone close to an individual and you're noticing a change in their persona, in their personality, in their sleep pattern, in their eating pattern, even in their libido, in their sexual appetite, in their spending habits, in their speech, even like they might be making reference to things that you're like, what are
Where
you
is
talking
this?
about?
Yeah.
Right, that type of thing. And even just mild things where you're just noticing that they're being kind of withdrawn, they're not being the usual jovial self,
Or bubbly or
or
want to
this,
party.
right, or just kind of not enjoying the things that they used to enjoy. Or you notice, all of a sudden you notice that they start to avoid certain circumstances or situations. So once you notice, and especially in children, because of course this goes right across the age ranges, especially in children, if you notice sometimes they get overly clingy, or they get over, their appetite might change, or their play behavior might change. You A little flag can go up, a little red flag should go up to say, something not right here. Let me really check in on this person.
Is it passed down from generation through genetics?
It can be. You can have a genetic predisposition, yes. And again, no. So remember, I said that there are certain circumstances that can bring it out more, etc. With this kind of what we call a quote unquote hormonal imbalance.
Right.
Um, but, and I don't want to just simplify it, but as I had explained to it before,
Yes.
just like a diabetes and so forth. But if you have a genetic predisposition, in addition to that, if you have other factors, so let's say your mother was bipolar, and you now are in a stressful situation, there's an increased chance. So let's say you're in an abusive relationship. There's an increased chance for an illness to come out because you have that genetic predisposition. There's
Oh.
there's less of a coping mechanism, so to speak. And so with those, trauma is one of the main predisposing factors, and trauma experience is one of the main predisposing factors for many reasons, to subsequent development of mental illnesses. Substance use, especially substance use initiation in the early developing ages,
Right.
also.
This is what I was also going to ask. So, like, let's say a mother and a father both has, bipolar, whatever, and they have a child.
Hmm.
Is it a must, or it's not a must that this child might end up with bipolar? Just saying
No,
both
it's not.
parents.
No, it's not a must. It's not a must.
And should this child now be careful, especially, with the use of marijuana, cocaine, whatever,
Definitely,
alcohol,
definitely.
cigarettes?
Yes, definitely. And this is where education and what we call insight awareness, insight building. Insight, when we say insight in the field, we mean enabling the individual to understand and accept their level of understanding of the condition and its treatment and willingness to adhere to such. Now, that treatment is a whole nother kettle of fish. But one of the key things to do, especially if you are genetically predisposed, is to engage in the preventative modalities to reduce the likelihood of you manifesting an
And what
illness.
would you recommend for that?
Well, each circumstance is unique, and
Okay.
each so I can't say one shoe doesn't fit all, but there are
Right.
certain general things that you would do.
Right.
Yeah, you always want to approach your health in a holistic way. So you want to make sure you take care of your mental health. You should be taking care of all of you, because what you find is that stressors in other aspects, if you're physically not eating enough food, let's say you have a issue with your body and you're not nourishing yourself properly, that can be a stressor that can aggravate a predisposition to having a mental condition.
Okay.
So you want to take care of yourself physically,
Right.
you want to take care of yourself socially, your social health. So your physical health, your social health. And when I say about your social health, this is your social connections, your intimate partner, your family, your friends, your co-workers, the other persons that you have hobbies and so forth. You go to church, that type of thing.
Right.
And you want to look and see what is stressful, what relationships might be stressful, because you have friends and you can also have frenemies.
Yes.
You have boyfriend, but you can have problem with the boyfriend,
So
right?
it
So
caused
you
more
want to
problem
see.
than before.
Exactly. So you want to see what are the stressors in your life and put things in place to deal with those stressors. But you also want to see what are the strengths, because you can have a sister that is like, so you're bona fide no matter what. You want to make sure that you cherish that relationship. You want to make sure that you reflect gratitude to that person and those positive relationships. So you want to enhance the positives in your life too, and nurture those. And lastly, and for me, the most important aspect of our health is our spiritual health. And this is different than organized religion. If
Right.
your method of spiritual exploration is religion and religious, fantastic. But you also have other ways of exploring your spirituality, which is your sense of self, your sense of uniqueness, your that purpose that you play in this vast universe and so forth. And so you have different ways of how you can explore that. And those are the mechanisms that you put in place to seek to ensure that if you have that predisposition to a mental condition, that you're going to reduce the chances of such. And of course, diet, of course, has a big part to play with it too.
And what does that mean? Balance in the diet or?
Well, the diet, all right. So our diet, our food, our food can determine our mood. So the brain and the gut literally are developed from the same set of cells
All
in
right.
the embryo.
Hold that so still we come right back. We're gonna take a
All
break.
right.
We're gonna take a break
Okay.
from Sex on the Bridge and we'll be right back. Yeah, that's my nephew Joe Marso. We've made it. All right, welcome back to Sex on the Bridge. And of course, you can call in to be a part of my studio audience. It's 876-676-4996. And or you can send me a voice note, 876-551-5782. Dr. Longmore?
Yeah, man, I'm here.
Okay, so we were talking about the diet. Because I
Hmm.
know when I eat chocolate, I'm happy.
Yeah. Listen, no, chocolate is good stuff. Let me tell you. So what I was saying before the break was that our food is really can really determine and impact our mood. And I was just going to relate it to a little bit of the biology for us to understand it, where when you're an embryo, and as in like in utero,
Mm-hmm.
born and developed or being developed, the layer of cells that develops to become your brain,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same layer of cells that becomes your GI tract, your alimentary system.
Okay.
So your food is very linked to your brain in terms of the response of your entire body. There's a similarity in what we eat to how it affects our mentation. To
So,
the
so,
effect, to
so,
the,
like a pregnant woman should definitely be careful in the beginning, especially what she feeds the embryo.
oh yes, most definitely. But that in and of itself, in terms of pregnancy, that's a kind of a different effect because there are certain foods and certain products or certain things that are very toxic to the entire development of the child. And so you have not just brain being affected, but even just their general development.
Right.
But yes, by all means, what we eat while pregnant can impact on the infant. But more so, what it means is now, even in reality, as we go about our daily basis, what we eat in our GI system and what we take in there can affect our mind and our thinking. And so you will find that even some persons, they may actually have, and a lot, I see this a lot in kids who have like the developmental disorders like autism and ADHD.
Right.
I have had children who they came to me on 3 or 4 different medications, prescription medications, and I change and alter their diet and I put certain things in their diet and remove certain things, and they're off medications. They're reduced to less than half of one medication. So our diet and a lot of our children out there who are sometimes struggling with these issues in our schools and stuff, actually, if you change their diet, you could see a huge improvement. But this also affects us as adults.
Right.
You might realize that, if like one of the biggest culprits is this thing that we call gluten, and gluten, everybody talking about gluten free and dairy free and
Right.
so
Right.
forth. But when you eat a bowl of like pasta, or that heavy flour based thing, or dumplings, you know you kind of have what you call the ethnic fatigue, the tiredness and stuff afterwards, the niggeritis.
Right.
If you eat a bowl of gluten-free pasta, you don't get as much. Some persons don't get that tiredness and that fatigue afterwards. They feel full, but you don't feel bogged down. And some persons, you may actually notice that their mood changes. They may actually start to feel down or depressed, or they may get bloated, their tummy gets bloated and that type of stuff. So our food can be significantly affecting us. The more sometimes when you pack yourself with a lot of berries and fruits and brightly colored
Vegetables
fresh
and fruits.
vegetables and fruit,
Yes.
you drink that, you feel up, you feel
Clean.
enlightened, you get a boost,
Yeah.
you know?
And okay, one of the things also, doc, is you'll have a child, the doctor says, okay, she has ADD or AHDD or whatever the initial stuff
That's what
are, right? And recommend them to take medication. Oh no, I don't want her to be addicted. Oh no, I don't. Can you tell me how important medication is when a doctor? I keep saying to them, if you had AIDS or cancer or any other thing, and they give you, nobody questions it. If you're gonna be
Yeah.
dependent on it for the rest of you or get addicted, but as the minute, I've heard a lot of my friends, children who have autism, HDA, ADD,
ADHD.
yeah, and all the other numbers. So tell
Yeah.
me.
I tell you, the reality is, Carlene, that it is hard sometimes. I mean, I know parents, when they get the diagnosis that their child has this type of issue, it's like their world shatters. It is like, oh my God, it's like you feel like your child is destined to some life of
Disaster.
struggle and destitution. And it does not have to be so.
No, it doesn't.
Um, no, it doesn't. And again, I go back to saying that people seek help and feel when they have a loss of a sense of control. If you go to someone, and this is why it is so important that you seek professional help and someone who is adequately trained to help you, because that person will and should be able to give you a plan of action that gives you back a sense of control. For me personally, I have a little adage that I go with that, and I am fully trained. I know the wonders of medications. Trust me, for many reasons. I have a little mantra that I live by, that medications are my last resort, but sometimes they have to be my first choice.
Okay.
They're my last resort, but sometimes they have to be my first choice based on what it is that I'm seeing in front of me. The emergency and the urgency of the situation may call for that. But I believe in going as minimal as possible, because for me, our food is our medicine, one. Two, if you deal with the other circumstances that might be surrounding the situation, you may find that that impacts on what is happening in front of you. So a lot of these kids too, who have these behavioral issues and who have these the quote unquote developmental issues, they have underlying issues of trauma. They have underlying issues of family discontent and coming from broken homes. A lot of these kids, they're dealing with situations where they're seeing their parents, you know, in broken relationships and things that have gone sour. And they are trying to cope with that as well as trying to cope with their own little lives. And that manifests in a certain way. So honestly, what I kind of find that is happening is that sometimes when I get a case that I have to see, I end up dealing with the family to fix that situation. I
Right.
end up having to put in significant amounts of family therapy because that child or that individual is just like it's like where everything culminates. It's like that is where it just kind of that's where it just
That's,
bursts at the
yeah,
seam.
coming
Yeah,
at
and
them,
and
so
you
they
and
have to
that's the
handle it.
right, and that's the manifestation. And in order to help that person, yes, you might have to write a prescription to settle and calm and so forth, but you have to also come in with what else might be needed. And this is again the holistic approach that might be necessary.
Okay. I have Carla. Carla, is Carla here? This is Carla Moore, part of my little
Greetings.
team. Yes, thank
Hi.
you. Gender
Hi, Carla.
specialist.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So I had Carla on last week, and she had a lot of information and things that I didn't know, could not even imagine that Carla went through. And as you said, one of her major ones was depression.
Mhm.
Carla, you can tell her your.
Oh yeah. So I have lived with depression for some time, and I recently started on antidepressants, which that has been a game changer for me. But I was sharing with Carlene and the audience that I had to go through the back and forth with myself about the decision. And it's really interesting that even though I work in mental health advocacy, when the time came for me to make that decision, I had the same shame around it, why you can't figure
Mhm,
out life on your own, why you need a
mhm,
pill for, get through your life every day. When I'm already taking a pill for high blood pressure, but the idea of taking a pill for depression was just almost too much to bear. And a lot of it really is that stigma that we have.
mhm,
And what I think of as this type of, it's almost like a hyper independence. I must can do everything on my own. I must can figure
mhm,
it out on my own. Like I
mhm,
must can
mhm.
hold it. I'm not supposed to need anybody. I'm not supposed to need anything to lean on. And I
Right.
know that like for myself, especially as a Caribbean woman, as a Black woman, as a woman who comes from a history of strong women, there's this internal pressure that comes up,
Mhm.
that you're supposed to be able to figure it out. And
Right.
because my depression wasn't presenting, I was high functioning with it. right? So I'm depressed, but I'm still managing to achieve a bunch of things. I'm depressed, but I'm able to get a master's. I'm depressed, but I'm able to run my own business. And so a person wouldn't look at me and think that I'm depressed. And then that's another thing, like trying to ease that into people and be like, well, actually, I'm unhappy almost every day. And they're like, but I don't understand. You seem so bubbly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do seem bubbly, but actually on
Mm-hmm.
the inside of it, it feels terrible. And
Right.
I think um, there's a weird type of almost coming out that you have to do when you have depression that doesn't present in the way that people expect depression to present, where you have to
Mm-hmm.
break it to people that despite looking okay, you're not actually feeling okay. And
Mm-hmm.
even I'm telling you that I'm not feeling okay, but I'm going to get up and go to work tomorrow. I'm
Right.
telling you that I'm not feeling okay, but I'm going to achieve all of the things that I set out to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a like a disconnect in people's mind, and you can see it on their faces where they're trying to make sense of it and they're
They
struggling,
don't fit that image.
you
Yeah.
don't fit the image. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that there are a lot of people, I know a lot of women in my generation, in my age group, who are like this. They are very high functioning, but them anxious all the time, anxiety and them out them head side. They
Mm-hmm.
are very high functioning, but when them go at them yard, them take in.
And
And
Mm-hmm.
and
when they look at the picture of a depressed person, they don't see themselves.
right. And
Yeah.
Dr. Longmore, how can we help with that? I
So, all right. So one of the things that I have to, because I don't want to get too therapeutic. I don't want to get into a session here because I mean, Carla, I can understand, and I am trained as you're speaking to probably recognize instinctively where I would go with a session with you and how to probably offer help and solution. But this is where we have to also recognize that when we're and this is one of the things in terms of mental health and especially since COVID, where
yes.
persons who you have to be aware of how much you disclose in a public setting, because when you are better and when you heal from the trauma, you also need to move forward knowing that you are capable of being strong with what you revealed when you were down. So you don't want to divulge too much. You want to save some things for the inner self so that the inner self can deal with it privately, and after you have overcome it, you then decide to say, you know what, I'm going to write a blockbuster film about this
Mm-hmm.
and really let it out. So one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that in terms of, which is what you're doing right here, Carly, is creating a forum where it can be spoken about, but also providing avenues for where it can be further explored in the security of knowing that you're getting the right help and you're amongst people who share the same issue, and you can openly relate because you don't know you're safe about that. And this is one of the things that I've had to deal with circumstances where persons have been on programs and they have divulged trauma, deep things. And I remember when I was getting the person turned up in the emergency room with a suicidal, basically being suicidal, like a couple of weeks after, because they basically now was dealing with having divulged this bit of this stuff and now going out there. So the very thing that they were very apprehensive about in the moment, because they felt it was being therapeutic, they probably go too far. So you have to know that there's a certain amount of inner privacy that you want to maintain until you have gotten the strength to heal from it, that you can step away from it and say, you know what, this is what really happened. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with recognizing and saying, okay, I am in this space. I don't look like the face of depression, but guess what? I am depressed. But you don't have to go in depth. And what you need to do, and what I encourage persons to do, is to seek the right forum in order to get that level of support. And when you are enabled to really step out, when you have overcome it, you go full forward, you know?
That's so. Does mental health affect your sexual performance life? Being intimate. Does it?
Oh yeah. It can affect in both ways. It can increase it or decrease it, huh? So you have disorders where you can have an increase in your libido, and you
Right.
have some where there you can be a decrease in your libido. Some it doesn't change it at all. And it's the sex drive and libido is one of what we call the vegetative symptoms, which is like your more basal function. So eating, sleep, your activity level, just physical activity level, and your sex drive. And so all of those can be affected by a condition where they can either increase or decrease, or they cannot. They don't have to change.
Does medication affects your sexual performance? Because I've heard some people tell me, "Oh, I don't want to take it because it make me dysfunctional, erectile dysfunction, this
Yep.
this." Um,
Yeah, and let me tell you, at the end of the day, you know that this matters a lot, and you
so
lose
a
patient
a
compliance
person,
because of
right? A
that.
person with a little thing, saying, "I'd rather be crazy than have my genital not
Yep.
performing."
No, that's real. That's very real. Um,
Is
and
there
and it's
anything
one of the
can be done
challenges.
about that?
So, yeah, so not all medicine, let me outrightly state that not all medication does that,
Right.
and not everyone is affected, and that medication may cause that a condition in someone, and it might not necessarily cause it in another individual. So this being known, there are newer types of medications, and this is one of the things that medications are developed with this in mind, to enable and encourage persons that this is not something, because we know that this is a big deterrent. And like I said before, my personal thing is medications are my last resort, but sometimes they have to be, and if they have to be, I try to go as low as possible, as minimal as possible, to ensure that the person is most who they want to be.
Like, I've heard of some medication for, mental illness, and when they're wearing out or, stop, they're even worse than before. They're saying, like, no,
Yes.
I'm depressed, no, I
Mm-hmm.
have side effects that I wasn't having before.
Right.
Some of
Yeah.
them makes
So
them very hungry, so they're, a person that was an average size just start to
blow up.
blow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
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 that's going to
Carlene,
send them into another state of madness or something.
yeah, fully. No, this is the truth, and this is the issues that persons deal with, and this is why I keep reiterating. You have to go with someone who is adequately trained to do it. So it's not every so not general practitioners and family doctors are not psychiatrists. So there are certain levels of it. You would not go to a family doctor or a general practitioner to get open heart surgery, or to do a hysterectomy.
Or extract your
There's a
teeth.
particular reason we are trained the level that we're trained. One, two, this is also why it is the holistic, you treat the entire individual. Another way of the holistic that we apply specifically in psychiatry is what we call the biopsychosocial and spiritual approach. So you're basically seeking all other aspects of the individual's care, that you optimize those. And when you find that you optimize those, you actually minimize the need for medications.
What happened when you see, like, a person who is a little, as we're gonna speak like regular people. I'm no doctor. A little
Yeah, man.
off, as all we'd say, they're a little off, and then you see them going into like religion and taking it to another level.
Yeah.
Is that something I should be concerned about that person?
Well, again, everything in context. And again, on that spectrum of, you have normal behavior that becomes abnormal when it starts to affect the functionality of the individual or them being safe for themselves or other persons. Yeah.
Right.
So the person who, and of course there's a big thing, a big interaction between religion and spirituality and mental health and so forth, and that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But the fact is that and this is why I said for me it is the most important aspect of our health, which is our spiritual health, our sense of identity and purpose, in the sense that if we don't give proper weight to that aspect, nothing else is going to work. To be very honest with you, if that person does not identify and recognize the modality that you are incorporating, no matter what you do, them say believe, kill, and believe cure. No matter what you do, if they are not made to recognize that this is in keeping with them as an individual and getting them to being who they want to be. And so religion sometimes offers that avenue and that comfort. But unfortunately, when you have that loss of touch with reality that can happen with serious mental illnesses, there's a disconnect for them to appreciate that they are in danger and they're not getting the help that they need. And that unfortunately can be very negative for them.
Carla, are you
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I think the whole human approach is the best approach for anything. And ultimately, the focus is on healing. And I think a lot of times people have experiences and or are in situations that are harmful to them. And you can get the help to deal with the symptoms that are coming up. But if you're constantly going to be re-traumatized by being in the same situation, then you're not going to get much further. And sometimes those are the difficult decisions that people have to make as a part of their holistic journey, towards improving their mental wellness, is ending relationships that are not working for you, stepping away from family dynamics that are not working for you, doing work so that you can change particular ways of thinking that are not working for you. And, it's very personal and very internal work, confronting things that you have been avoiding for 20, 30, 40 years, disappointing people that you would never want to disappoint. It's also something that I encounter as a life coach, right? You'll have people who come into coaching and there will be one big issue that is stopping them from achieving the things that they want to achieve. And very often it's something like a relationship with a parent. And they don't want to confront it because they're afraid that they're going to betray the parent or disappoint the parent, or even admitting that some of the things that the parent did, were traumatic. They feel as though they're betraying their parent to admit that. And so they'd rather sit there and not move, not do the things that are in their purpose, than to just go, yeah, my mother did really do some messed up things and it mashed me up. And like that's the work, even if you are on medication, the medication alone, okay, so you start medication and you're at point A, you can't just stay at point A and on the medication. You have to move to point B and C and D and so forth till you reach all the way as in. And that's the work. Like that's actually the work of your own healing. And like that takes courage. It takes courage to actually realize what's in your own best interest and to go after it, And I have found that for a lot of people, it's the rock bottom of suicidal ideation. And if they manage to make it through that, get over that episode and look back and go, wait there, would I actually rather just left life than left the situation that we did, No, I better left the situation we did, And you realize that you're fighting for your life, because if you stay in that situation, you are going to take your life. You are going to end your life to get out of the situation. So you need to find a way out. And sometimes it comes down to that. I am fighting for my life, and for my right to be alive. And I'm going to do this thing. And I know that you're not going to approve of it and you're not going to be happy with it, but it's okay because I will be happy and I will be healthy with it. And those are the decisions that we have to make. It's not easy. Like, I'm not here to tell anybody that fighting for a life that feels better for you is easy. It's not always an easy thing, but it's worth it.
All right, we're going to worth it more. So we're going to take a break on Sex on the Bridge and we'll be right back. So welcome back to Sex on the Bridge, and that's both of them are my nephews, Joe Mercer and Johan. Yeah, I'm going to set this place on fire, burn it down. Welcome back to Sex on the Bridge, and to call in 876-676-4996 or send me a voice note, 876-551-5782. And my guests are Senator Dr. Sophia Longmore and Carla Moore. Welcome back, guys. As you were saying when we went to the break, we have to do the commercial, Doc.
Yeah, man. Gotta pay the bills.
Yeah. All right, Carla, I don't know, we read up and we do the study. Or Doc, last week you said it, where, this generation is having less sex because of mental illness.
There's some research that came out in 2020 that said that at that point they were having less sex than any other previous generations for a couple of reasons: depression, anxiety, stress, people living at home longer. So, you can't really carry people in a mommy and daddy yard. And some of them have lost interest just because they're like, people are playing games. But also because people are more expansive in how they're having relationships now, people are able to get their needs met in a way that they weren't able to before. Like in the past, some people were having sex just for the cuddling after. I never really the sex they did want, They just want to go cuddling after, but you did have to have the sex to get the cuddling. People are now able to be like, yeah, we want to meet up and do a cuddle date. But a significant part of it is that people are having depression and anxiety, and so the interest in sex is significantly lower.
Doc, you can expand on that if that's also what you've seen.
I was not privy to that research myself, but to be very honest with you, I'm not surprised to hear it, and especially with the timing, coincident with a lot of the surge in social media. One of the unfortunate things is that social media, that in the name social, it is supposed to enhance socialization and social connectivity. It actually kind of operates in the opposite way, unfortunately. Whereas it would normally be that persons would interact interpersonally, and that could lead to sexual acts and that type of sexual chemistry and exploration. Social media now has people being isolated in their own space. You see people on dates at a restaurant and they throw them into the phone. You go to a party and people stand up, normally them just stand up on the side, hardly a dance. Now them stand up on the phone, them and so forth. Mm-hmm. But I tell you, I'd be curious to hear whether or not, one, if that study was here in Jamaica, and two,
it wasn't.
Okay, that is one. And two, post-COVID, when we reopened and people started to socialize, let me tell you, people were getting their groove on.
They really were.
And I was happy. Like, I mean, when you went to a party and so forth, you were seeing people dancing again. I was like so happy to see this. I was like, you go to people are really getting back into that, and you see young people dancing and moving and so forth. So but I can understand in another environment that being true, because the COVID impact on the young adult and the teenagers was so very significant. From the very get-go, that was one of the populations that I was very concerned about, because normally, naturally, teenagers are at an age of exploration. They're at that psychological stage of what we call identity versus confusion. They are searching, what food them eat, what clothes them like to wear, what sexuality they are, what subjects. So it's an age of exploration. And what happened with COVID and prior to that, with the social media stuff that people are behind the screens rather than going out there and engaging, is
Mm-hmm.
that they're not able to explore these possibilities and
Yeah.
their identity, and so they
Exactly.
become more reclusive and stuff.
Yeah.
But one
Yeah.
or two, a couple of the other factors that I think that you mentioned, Carlo, I think definitely impacted. The fact that, a lot of persons for financial reasons are probably staying more in the parental home space.
Yes.
Yes.
People, and again, the reality of it is that a lot of sexual act would happen because women probably were in a financial situation where they had to
Yeah.
engage in such. Of course, our women are becoming more and more financially independent, and so that
Mm-hmm.
might also impact on it. Unfortunately, and I mean, it's not a bad thing. There's also the fear of STDs. There's also increased awareness to in terms of what might be going on out there. So many factors, I think. But that's an
Yeah.
interesting finding. In terms of it being related to mental illness, um, I guess, I think the social media impacts on depression. I think that impacts on depression. I think a lot of young people, and I think one of the efforts that we make is to actually say to parents that just like how you parent a child in terms of what food to eat and how to go about their schoolwork, you should
Mm-hmm.
also parent
Parent.
them around social media and how to use it, and recognizing that social media is a tool.
And
It
and
is
and
it is a
that
tool for you to use.
right. And that don't you think if we're cutting out the sex out of our life, it going lessen, how we enjoy the fullness of living.
Yeah, most definitely. No, I mean, sex is a good thing and sex is wonderful. But you want to do it safely. And you also don't want to feel like you have to, you know? You want to be in a space where it is a choice that you enjoy, that you are able to determine where, when, how, why, etc.
But then with so
And
Mm-hmm.
much distraction and so much negative to it and so much, is this gonna make we overthink everything now? And our
so
parents, our parents seems to were, doing things and they were happy and I don't know.
but you see, Carly, you're going into another thing now, because one of the things that should be, I personally think, should be out there more, is more open talk about sex. I think
Yes.
sex, sex health education is something that we need to become more aware of. Sex has always been a taboo topic
Mm-hmm.
in our environment,
Yes, as
and
Carla
what
said
that
last week, mental illness and sex is just a no.
and that is because a lot, if you, okay, so Carla mentioned about before, like, what mother did and so forth. A lot of our issues that we tend to deal with is stems from generational trauma and
Mm-hmm.
generational, the continuity of these learned negative behaviors, or what we call negative defense mechanisms, that people they utilize to cope with stressors, and inadvertently don't realize that it can be damaging, and they actually teach it to the generations subsequently. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the unfortunate things is the tabooness of sex. And it's like Jamaica is one of the most sexualized societies, but yet we're not supposed to talk about it.
I
A
know
child is not supposed to ask question, like if him see a condom, him not supposed to ask what
what
that
it's
is
for.
for.
Yeah.
Or a girl is about, is probably a boy goes in and sees his sister for some reason, a tampon or something like that, and it's supposed to be hushed about or whatever. It's not, I mean, unused and so forth, clearly. But the whole point is that if we don't talk about it, and especially in today's world, people are going to find ways, and children are going to find ways of getting their answers, and they're going to find ways that are not healthy. And unfortunately, one of the key messages around sex that we probably need to be saying out there is that you have a right to know about it. You have a
Mm-hmm.
right to learn what it is about, and it is not the uncle and your father, best friend, who is the person who is supposed to tell you or show you, so to speak. And a lot of
Yeah.
children are unfortunately, because they feel that they can't answer, you have predators out there who seek out to provide these answers in very negative ways.
Yes. And
I think it's important
go
for
ahead.
us to draw the distinction between Jamaican culture and dancehall culture, though, because I think we use the two interchangeably and they're not always the same.
Exactly.
Dancehall culture is going to talk openly about sex, but in Jamaican culture, outside of dancehall, it's still fairly sexually conservative. And I always say to parents, you tell your picnic about sex, or Vibes Cartel, go tell them.
And
And this is not
sometimes
me having anything against dancehall, but
no,
just
and sometimes
understand.
when that's all tell you, you don't believe it. You think it's just a fabricated story to make the song sound good. It's not always, oh, please, him can't do that, or that's not going to happen. Because remember, especially in
Or they
dancehall,
want to find out if it's true.
and most times, remember, in dancehall, no man does oral sex. Let's remember that. Every girl do in dancehall in the songs, but no man does oral sex in dancehall. All right, so we know it's crap in the songs.
I just don't want us to lie in 2023. I just want us to stop the lies.
They'll never
I want us to stop the lies.
the men will never speak the truth because it's still, as you said, taboo, and the men will never ever speak the truth. And remember, a lot of them have mental issues, so they can't speak the truth. And so if you're gonna let dancehall teach your children, then as Doc should say, you're out of control with your child or
Right.
children.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the truth. I mean, we should be using dancehall as a tool to do it right.
Absolutely.
We should be providing the avenues for that creativity to enhance and enable the betterment, not necessarily to hide or to be putting your head in the sand. The reality is that this is what is happening out there. And if we don't deal with it and recognize it and incorporate these new age ways, we are going to get left behind, and we're going to see it manifest in ways as in we turn around and scratch our head. How do we deal with crime and violence? This all comes from somewhere, and we have to put the mechanisms in place to address these issues,
And
because
just to
they it can be very damaging.
And just to go back to one of the points in dancehall, if a dancehall prominent DJ comes out and say he has done sex, oral sex, believe me, that would be he's mentally ill. Something is wrong, or he want him career to done. Yeah, Carla, you and I might be happy to hear it, and they're lying. Half of them comes out and sing, "Oh, girl," and it's a lie.
But I feel like there are like one or two dancehall tastemakers, pardon the pun. If they came out and said that they were in favor of head, we would see a turning of the tide. Because guess
Yes,
what?
it would. Yes, it would.
Jamaican boys
Yes, it
on
would.
TikTok,
Yes, it
a
would.
good amount of them in the teenage years, them all talk about it, and I'm like, where is your father? Your
But it's not the
female
female,
on
it's not the
TikTok.
male artist, it's just the females. All the female artists is now telling you down in your throat, down in your foot, down in somewhere, as if it's
In your spleen.
it's like it's a figurine. But all the men says it's a no, and they're still doing it 30 years,
Cognitive
20 years later.
dissonance.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance. There's like a particular thing that I feel we could put into the DSM, because why Jamaica? Anyways, Carla, that's a whole other thesis.
That's
Separate
a whole
thesis.
other, I mean, I'm no dancehall expert. I listen to good music, but I can't say I can. I'd have to listen to some late tunes to hear what the current thing is. But it's unfortunate to hear that people are still so very taboo. And again, like I said, Jamaica is probably one of the most sexualized societies out there, and yet, so there's a certain level of hypocrisy that is being seen.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
Doc,
absolutely.
back to the being, the hypocrite. If let's say I am schizophrenic, I'm not. I don't know. Probably I am, but I've not been diagnosed. But let's say I know, and I'm dating a guy. Should I tell him upfront that I am, or should I wait till I
No,
have an episode?
absolutely not.
I
Absolutely
shouldn't tell
not.
him that
Definitely.
I'm
Not
bipolar or
until
till I have an
No,
episode?
just like I said before, in terms of even public disclosure of issues that you're going, until you are comfortable enough, unless a circumstance, and let me put this caveat, where unless a circumstance comes up where it is critical for you to disclose, okay. But I certainly, because you, especially at the outset of a relationship, you don't know where that person or what the future of that is and how that person might react.
But
So if you recognize that this individual is someone who is going to react negatively if you don't disclose, then perhaps it's a red flag that you should not, right? Because if clearly if you disclose and they're going to hit the streets or they're going to head away from you, that means what security are you going to have that they're going to keep this information private?
yeah, but
Remember,
but shouldn't I get that out? So if he's gonna not like it, let us go our separate ways, because then you probably won't be the man for me. Like,
right?
if
Agreed, but
somebody
how do
had
you feel?
AIDS, wouldn't you want them to tell you?
Yeah,
Would you
yes.
date a man and
when I think when the time, but this is not AIDS. This is not
Okay.
something. This is something that it
I
is
just
not
wanted to, yeah, I just
contagious.
wanted to see.
No, man, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand you. But this is why you have to, and I'm very happy that you brought this question, because it is something that persons struggle with. And my conviction is always to protect yourself,
First.
because you don't protect yourself first. And if it is a matter where you reach the stage in a I wouldn't disclose it on the first date. Yeah, because you don't know what, and until you know that you can trust this person to a certain level. As a matter of fact, people are getting so enabled now that they may even sign a document. You have that too. People might sign an NDA and say, you know what, I'm gonna tell you something, and I hope that you don't go out there and go spread it, because that is the danger. Even in disclosing about cases and stuff, we are under very strict legal obligations to not disclose information around person's mental condition, because it can be very damaging. You don't know, someone could use that. Let's say you disclose that to that individual and this person want to spite you, and them just call up your workplace and tell your boss when you didn't want your boss and you are functioning quite well at work. Yeah, it could become a tool that they use against you. So my suggestion is definitely, especially if you see that the relationship is going to reach a certain level of seriousness and probably commitment, then you would disclose when you know that you're confident that this person is likely, because you can never be 100% confident. And of course, like I said, I've heard of circumstances where people sign a document to the effect that, you know, that information is there.
If somebody is bipolar or any one of the mental illness, they shouldn't tell the workplace that, you know. So if
they're not obligated to.
No, but they tell them though? Should they, you know? So if
again,
I see, dependent.
Yeah, again, so you have most organizations, or, you know, depends on the level, might have a HR department and so forth, and you can, under discrete methods, indicate it. When it might become critical for you to maybe disclose and so forth is, let's say you get ill and you're absent. It might come out why you're absent. And again, you can also insist that only certain personnel at the workplace are made aware. But it is your private information. You're not obligated to disclose it. And especially if you have no overt, obvious signs of ill health and are able to function in your capacity, there's no reason for you to feel like you need to.
Just plain devil's advocate. So like, yeah, I meet a guy and I say, my only thing is I don't want a man who hits me. And do you hit women? And him say, no. But a couple months down the road, or what should I do? Lock him up, charge him, because wouldn't he have lied to me?
Well, you can, separate apart from if it is a matter of hitting you, he would have physically harmed you. So that,
but he never told me. He never told me. Is it the same? I just want to see if it's the same. He never told me, because he wouldn't want. Because if him tell me, look, man, me gone.
put it this way now, when it becomes an issue, and this is why I say now, let's say, and I'll give you the example that you're probably trying to grasp for. Let's say you have bipolar disorder and you did not disclose it. And 4 months down the road now, your bipolar disorder caused you to spend out in credit card. Like you're just going on a spending spree. Or you have $200,000 put on somewhere and you just take it and go spend it out or something like that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you turn around and say, is the bipolar disorder cause it? Right? Me never know, me never in my right state of mind when we do it. That I think would be where he would be very, very upset. Because one, apart from the fact that you have spent his money, you did not disclose to him. And so it is for you to determine the stage of the relationship that you feel comfortable enough with this individual to do it.
So you meet
but
a guy.
Definitely not from. Sorry, I wouldn't definitely recommend it from the get-go. No.
Right. You meet a man and you said, and he asks, and I said, listen, don't talk to me, I'm mad. That's he doesn't oh no, mom, I can't handle it. But I told you I'm mad. Why you think I don't mean that? Why when you tell them something direct? No, mom, I can't handle any mad woman.
Well,
but then when me get mad, he can't handle it.
If you take out the bag of pills and say, see that, he might believe you that time. Right? I mean, the whole point is that, Carlene, that there are, as I said before, mental illness and mental wellness is on a spectrum. And you have the very mild situations that are as Carla indicated, persons can be quite functional, quite you're not able to tell, and even without a clue that this person is affected. And then you have the other people who are obviously something isn't right, something isn't good. If you are someone who is living with a mental condition and you are predisposed to not being stable, if you know, and this is where I was talking about with the insight and knowing about your illness and so forth, if you know that there are certain circumstances that will exacerbate it, it doesn't have to be total madness or anything. Let's say it's something like a phobia, like you're fearful of going into public spaces. You might have to disclose to him. You might have to say, boy, sir, we can't go into the crowd, we can't go into the crowd.
Right. Because I'm claustrophobic or something.
Right. You're claustrophobic or you just can't deal with the crowd. You might have to disclose it. But it is based on your level of comfort with the individual. And again, at the stage of the relationship that you might be at.
Right. Like learning since last week and this week, I mean, I've dealt with mental illness most of my life based on my mother was bipolar and schizophrenic. And I have family members that I love dearly that's going through this. But let's say I'm in a relationship and I see signs because I'm accustomed to, what I'm accustomed to. But this person don't think nothing is wrong with them. How do you approach that to try and say to your boyfriend or your girlfriend, I need you to go to see Dr. Longmore because I think you, without, them getting offensive or offended?
Boy, you come with some good questions. But these are real circumstances, and I mean we have to deal with them. The point is that, and again with the insight, if you have that level of relationship and interaction where you can communicate and connect with the individual that much for them to trust you, a simple conversation should be enough, especially if you can say to them, look, man, my mother used to deal with this. I saw my brother dealing with this. I am seeing certain things that, boy, I'm seriously concerned. And, the truth of the matter is no matter how much you try and ignore it, it is only going to get worse. And with nowadays, you have treatment that people can take and you don't even realize X, Y, and Z. You can navigate that conversation. All right. Another thing that I use and I encourage some of my the residents and so forth that are in my training program and stuff, in the training program at the hospital, is and you have to do this with professionally now with discretion is sometimes you have to use audiovisual to your advantage. If you see the individual reacting in an erratic way and you know that this is not them, hit the record on your phone. Hit the record.
And play it back to them.
It. You don't have to overtly do it and say, see me a record you and that. No, you can do it discreetly.
To show them what they're doing.
When they're in a moment, when they are calm and you can approach and say, yo, baby, let me show you something. Let me show you this. You see this? I know you that, and you show them objectively. Sometimes it's even how people might be writing things or, just how they may be expressing themselves. And sometimes that you basically use that to show the individual objectively that this is not who you ideally want to be. And there is help that can be had about it and how to deal with it.
And probably, say stop smoking, stop drinking, because when you drink, this is how you behave, or when you smoke.
Exactly. And that's where when the flip out the phone can come. So when you know the person, you see the person drinking and you know the pattern. You know, say I'm going to start do this or that I'm going to start happening and I'm going to start do that. Apart from unless you have a group of good, close individuals around the individual too, who you can do an intervention, what they call an intervention, where you bring them together and say, okay, we're all people who care about you and we're seeing this pattern, etc., etc. And you can do it that way. But good old technology, use it objectively, but not in a way that is threatening or to make a mockery of the individual.
And you also want to think about your own safety.
Yes.
You want to be mindful that the person might not be open to it and you don't know how they'll respond. So
exactly.
Keep that in mind when you're doing it. If you see that things are starting to escalate, back off.
Yeah.
And consider a different approach. It's better to rest it and you remain safe than push it and something happen to you.
And call for help.
Yeah.
Right, because
call for help if needed.
This was what I'm going to ask next is, okay, away from depression, how do you know you are bipolar or schizophrenic, and what do you do? What should you do? Let's say you're just not sure in your comfort zone. I'm not depressed. I'm not doing me, but I'm not depressed. Not me, just generalizing.
Right, where I want to be.
What is the signs to bipolar, or because everybody know of the depression, so we have that one pat. But as you say, if I start locking in my room and I'm seeing I'm not depressed or anything and I'm playing my music, but I won't come out the room. And I'm talking on the phone, but I just don't want to come out. I don't know the signs. I don't know what, but what should, if you realize I'm just not the same, but I'm not depressed.
Not who I want to be. Right. So, basically, as much as you can equip yourself with information, the internet is a wonderful thing. Just looking up, Googling, what are the symptoms of bipolar disorder? What are the symptoms of schizophrenia? And do I have a mental illness? You can just Google that and something will come up. But you have classic signs. How we come up with these diagnoses is that you have certain singular symptoms and they form blocks of symptoms to become a diagnosis when they're present for a particular period of time. So like bipolar disorder, there can be two phases to it. The manic phase, the high phase, and then you have the low phase that can happen, the depression phase. In the manic phase, you could be having what you call racing thoughts. You're thinking about many things at the same time, or you're going from one thing to the other, or you have flight of ideas, or you're thinking of one thing and it gone to another. You can have what we call increased goal-directed activities. You're doing multiple things, separate from multitasking. You're not really accomplishing anything, but you're doing a lot, You can go into what you call indulgent behaviors. So you might be spending a lot of money. You might be abusing substances. You might be being overly sexed. So you're indulgent in things. There's a range of symptoms that depict what we call a manic episode or a manic presentation. And then you have the ones that can depict depression and thing, and you realize that, okay, these have been present for a particular period of time, and so it is likely that you're dealing with that. But you also have other illnesses that these same symptoms can be a part of, and this is where the professional comes in knowing which ones might be what, etc., etc. Schizophrenia, the classic thing that people always remember knowing about schizophrenia, is in some way there's a loss of touch with reality. So is it that you have some sense that people are trying to work against you, what you call paranoid delusions? Is it that you feel that the people are persecuting you or trying to hurt you in any way? Do you find that you're withdrawn, you're suspicious of people and the company and so forth? So there are different symptom profiles.
But the key, they should go seek help. Seek help.
Seek help. And like I said, it is critical for people that you have around you, when they recognize that you are not being yourself, that they may encourage you to seek the help that you might need, or may enable you to do that.
Okay. We don't have a lot of psychiatrists here, from what I know. We have one mental institution, and then we have Ward 21. How do we balance this? Let's say you're in Negril. What, do you have to come to Kingston?
No, man. So you see, and this is it. There's a lot of misconceptions about mental health, and I mean, this is something. There's an effort that I'm a part of to enable and get the information out there to people about where they can get help. And this is something that we're hoping to come with and roll this out in the early part of this year. But every major hospital, the emergency room sees mental health cases there. So if you have an emergency, you can go to practically every public hospital, not the private ones.
Right.
Every public hospital has facilities to see to mental health cases in emergency situations. Every health center, every public health center has a mental health clinic day or days per month where they see people for follow-up. You also have the community teams. Most hospitals, if not all, have a community team that is attached to it that will go into the community, because community care is a way of where we want to treat individuals, because it is better for them. They're better for the outcome and for the return to life and so forth. So you have a community team that is attached to each hospital that goes out. So you have those facilities. You also have, with not a lot of psychiatrists, but right now we have about 40, I think it's about 48 psychiatrists in Jamaica. And you have, they're all spread all over Jamaica. Most are attached to a hospital, but you also have persons who are in private practice and so forth. And the Jamaica Psychiatric Association, you can contact us through our social media pages or send us an email, jampsych@gmail.com. Jamaica Psychiatric Association at gmail.com, and you can get in touch with a psychiatrist who may be somewhere in your vicinity. The Jamaica Psychological Society is the society for psychologists in Jamaica, and again, they have a network throughout Jamaica and tend to work in conjunction. But trust me, we don't have enough for the level of need.
And the amount of people that need help. And so one of the things we want to do also, this initiative that, like I said, that I'm going to be working with the ministry, is to also try to educate and put information out there about careers in mental health. So we want to try and enable, because we know that a lot of persons might be interested in wanting to help with these issues, but they don't know how to go for that career path and so forth. So we want to put that out there to attract people to the field. Yeah, because I had an experience with taking someone to the Bellevue Hospital a couple weeks ago. I got there at 11 p.m. and they wouldn't even let us pass to get they say it's closed. And I needed to take the patient to KPH.
Yeah. Unfortunately, where Bellevue is located, there's a serious security concern. And that's the unfortunate truth about it.
And KPH?
But KPH has more security. Let me not say what exactly the reasons are, but I know because of location and resources, that kind of has to happen. But let me also underscore that we recognize that the Bellevue Hospital, there's a whole effort to revamp what Bellevue will do, because the facility is really run down and everything. Like, I don't know if you've actually been on the grounds in a recent while.
No, the front looked beautiful. It's the nicest I've ever seen it. It really looked nice at the front.
So there's a lot of effort too, and I mean there's a whole effort to repurpose Bellevue and to make it more applicable to the needs of the community. So there is recognition for that, but unfortunately, this is a sad truth that even though we are so very aware now, and especially post-COVID, of the significance of mental health and the prevalence and the real need for mental health care, that we still don't have enough resources coming. And hopefully, we're very hopeful that this might change.
And another thing, when you go to some of these places, I won't call any names, they just give everybody the same medication at first. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, one of the realities is that we have limited availability with the range of medications available. So, Jamaica is not like the US, where the latest drug that comes out is immediately available here. Or again,
because that's horrible.
With COVID too, the supply chain for a lot of the medications was broken. So we source a lot of our medications coming out of India, places like India and so forth. And with COVID, like, a lot of those shipment pathways were disrupted and so forth. So we're having a significant shortage in some of the medications. And unfortunately, again, it goes back to the level of responsiveness where it needs to happen in terms of the range of medications that we have available to us.
Yes,
and we do recognize this. And that's why I tell you, Carlene, that my first push is that I also, not just for out of just good practice, I think, is that medications are my last resort. Because sometimes I try to do whatever I can to minimize the need for it.
Right. Because I had someone in the hospital and the prescriptions were sent out. I wasn't even in town. And who was there didn't have any money to get the prescription. And I'm like, and when I asked if you got medication, he said no. They gave him like one, because then he's not going to be able to get better. It's not like how you would have a patient one-on-one and you can go through. This is several persons being in this facility, and there is no medication.
No medication is available at the facility.
Yeah. And they're sending patients, family member, with the prescriptions to have it filled to return it. And I'm saying, one of the things.
Carlene, let me tell you, I'm very grateful for you to bring this up, because we need to shed light on these issues. We need to recognize that
because
this is what
one
is
of
happening.
The prescription was $25,000.
Yep.
And she didn't have it.
Yep. Yep. That's the sad truth about it. And even some of these medications are actually on the NHF. We'll still carry these costs.
Yep.
So it's really very, bless your heart for shedding light on this. And I mean, it is one of the sad realities. And at the end of the day, though, is that the consequences of not providing these is so much more expensive.
Yeah.
It's so much more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you don't provide the medications for this person and they turn around and wield a machete and attack somebody in the community or kill them one mother and something. You have to go incarcerate them. You have to go feed them. You have to go deal with the court case.
Yeah, it's way
You
more
have to go-
expensive. And then our family's broken and, a loved one. Anyways, it's been 2 hours and we're at the end of the show. Yes. I want to thank you both. I want to thank Senator Longmore for a lovely, I ask the questions that I want to get the correct answers, and the way how you answered me, it's clear.
happy I could help. Happy I
Yes,
could help.
and
Get some honey and lime for that.
Yes, and Carla, as usual and as always, thank you so much for coming in.
Always a pleasure.
And just tell us back how we can get in touch with you, Dr. Longmore and Carla. Coffee.
Go ahead,
Dr.
Carla.
Longmore. All right. So you can find me at More Talk JA on most social media. That's MOORETALKJA. Or you can just go to moretalkja.com. For people who might be trying to figure out the clinic schedules, the mental health clinic schedules, you can find them online. I don't know how up to date they are. I know they were up to date to about 2019, but if you look for mental health clinic schedule on Google, it will pop right to the top, and it gives you the list of all of the facilities and the dates for anybody who might be interested.
Okay. Awesome.
Dr. Long?
And I'm on social media, Sapphire Longmore or Senator Dr. Sapphire Longmore. And I'm a consultant at UE at the department there. And my private practice, my email is Dr. Sapphire 876. So DRSAPHIRE 876 at gmail.com. I don't give my private practice location because of privacy issues. So I just give a method of contact and we go from there.
I'll be coming to see you.
Anytime. I'm right here.
Thank you guys so much for another great episode of Sex on the Bridge. I want to thank all my listeners, my viewers, and of course, as always, I will see you next week. But I also want to thank my engineer and my producer, Daniela Doyle. Did I get it? And Kevin Williams, my engineer, and all of you out there in the world. Mental illness is serious. It can be devastating to each family. So don't be afraid. I hope you were listening and get some understanding that you don't have to do it, bashful. You can find ways to, sort it out. But I want to thank you all for listening. I want to welcome my sister Pinky. Yes, I'm bigging them up again because family is everything to me and it makes a difference in my life. So I want to thank my sisters for coming down. Pinky, Lorraine, Corona, Janet, Suzette, Kerry, and my niece Shanice and Elijah for being here. I love you guys. And as always, please be respectful. I see you next week, Tuesday.